Thanks for coming out tonight. I appreciate it. During my time here, and since I first arrived, I've been talking about the concept of shared fate. The idea that our life chances are connected one to the other, both individually, but in this case, more importantly, collectively, and that is between UNCG and the broader Greensboro community. And this is what's at the core of what we are as Spartans, but also what this Millennial Campus initiative is about. As you know, this is an exciting time for our university. I've written about it recently where I've called this an inflection point. Really the place in the arc of the university's history where we can fundamentally transform the size, scope, scale, impact of the university, or we can accept the status quo. And of course, I've argued for the more transformative side of that equation. So this momentum is evinced by the very simple fact that the university last year celebrated its 125th anniversary. This year we've had our first in the school's history student enrollment over 20,000. And of course, many of you who are local know that we have broken ground on the replacement to the McKeever building, which will house our new nursing and instructional activities. I could go on. We've had a number of external accolades, whether from the Gates Foundation, Department of Education, Education Trust. Our athletic teams won 5 championships last year. We've had landmark academic achievements by our faculty. The momentum is on our side. And our vision for the future is fundamentally about our service to our students and our community. Indeed, the university's motto is service, and we fully embrace that. But this idea of shared fate means we only succeed as much as you succeed, and we hope that your success is codependent on ours. And that then requires, as Nikki said, that we work together. Now, one of the ways we intend to do this is through our Millennial Campus initiative. As Nikki said, it identifies 2 districts, one along Westgate City and one along Tate Street. And what Millennial Campus designation in the UNC system means is that a university is exempt from the Umstead Act, or a non-compete act. In other words, universities are not to be in competition with the private sector. Obviously, we don't want to use the taxpayers' money to compete against them, and that makes obvious sense. However, there are some good reasons that the university and the private sector can collaborate, and the system has recognized, as says the legislature, that there are exemptions to this, and the Millennial Campus designation is the tool or mechanism by which this happens. So fundamentally it's a legal description, but in practice it means that we can engage, we the university, in collaboration and partnership with private interests, as long as that collaboration is consistent with the academic mission of the university. In other words, we can't look to build for-profit entities, right? We're not going to partner with Target and profit share, but rather the reason that, as Nikki suggested, that we have identified health and wellness as a substantive theme along Gate City and arts and culture around Tate Street is because these indeed are 2 of the areas of great strength at the university and where we already have development. If you think about health and wellness in Gate City, you think of everything from the Kaplan Center all the way down, actually, to Union Square. And if you think of arts and culture, we're sort of sitting in it. From here back up to Gate City, all the way back down the other way down Tate Street, where we have Performing Arts Center, or the UNCG Auditorium, Taylor Theater, Brown Theater, and some of our theater department facilities. So this effort, this initiative, represents an opportunity to form strategic partnerships between the community writ large and the university. And we're able to create, or our proposal is to create meaningful academic experiences for our students, impactful and creative research and artistic endeavors, and to drive innovation and economic growth and cultural enrichment in the area. And this is indeed what we intend to do. The upshot of this is that, on the one hand, it enhances the educational experience of our campus, and on the other, it speaks to the prosperity of the immediate area surrounding the campus. And you will hear a lot more about this. Nikki said something that I want to lift up, and that is the purpose of this meeting and a series of others we've held with various stakeholders, is that this doesn't work unless we are in fact collaborators. I was the first ever Vice Chancellor for Community Partnerships in the University of California system, and my job was to make UCLA, which sits at the gates of Bel Air, more collaborative with the broader LA community. So you can imagine how I was greeted when I first rolled in from Westwood to South LA. I know how important it is that the community finds common interest with the university. And as the dean of a policy school, where we really pushed engaged scholarship, I know how important it is for us as a campus to understand that the community has a great deal of knowledge too. The academy does not have the corner of the market on knowledge. The community has knowledge and experience, and we have to honor that, and we will. So this process has to be transparent. It has to be communicative. We have to have multiple points of entry. I thought Nikki did a good job of outlining the many ways that you can interact with this process if you're either people who aren't here tonight, or if you think of something after the fact, or as we go on. I think it's our intention, and indeed my intention as the campus leader, to ensure that this process is open and inclusive. And by the way, the university's not perfect. I'm no fool. I've done this before. I understand we make missteps, and you ought to understand that too. And you also ought to understand that sometimes a community makes unreasonable demands. We're going to have some of this tension. I mean, it's natural. If anybody stands up here and tells you, hey, this is going to be a cakewalk, then they're selling you a bill of goods. I think the first thing about a good relationship is honesty. And so I'm not here to blow smoke at you. I understand that we're a university and we have certain inherent resources, but the community has resources too. So we have to respect each other. Don't always have to agree, but we do have to respect each other. And I intend for this university to do that. Now, I've been fortunate enough to have contact with my friend Bob Giolis and his company. Bob, for those who don't know, we were just talking about, bears the battle scars of having directed the Centennial Campus at North Carolina State University for many years. And indeed, that has been held out as the prototype of a Millennial Campus, which is fine, but we're going to do it differently. Right? I like it, nice place and everything, but we're going to do it differently. But Bob's had great experience with this, and he's brought on a very experienced team to help guide this process. So I encourage you to be involved, stay involved. Nikki made another great point, which is this isn't a one-time, one-shot deal. The university's been here for 125 years, and I suspect we'll be here for 125 more. And these neighborhoods have been here for an equally long time, and they will continue to be here. So as long as we work together and we're honest with each other and respectful of each other, I think we're going to find this mutually beneficial. So I'll turn it over to the folks who kind of know what they're doing. And that's Bob Giolis here, Bob. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Chancellor. As someone who grew up here in North Carolina, as I did, and as someone who's worked in the university system, it's terrific to see a chancellor like Frank Gilliam, someone who is, it's exciting, and it's an exciting time here at UNC Greensboro. Let me introduce a little bit more about myself, just so you know, and what I'm doing here, and what this is all about tonight. So I'm Bob Giolis. Grew up in North Carolina, went to NC State University, and had the great privilege and honor of working at NC State University for almost 13 years. And I ran a project there called Millennial Campus, which we'll talk a little bit more in this presentation. After working at Centennial, I worked a little further south in Clemson, South Carolina, working to build a research park there with Clemson and BMW called ICAR. And then I came back to North Carolina and had the great honor of being the president and CEO of the Research Triangle Park, really the granddaddy of research parks. And so now I work with a company called HRNA. And in my scope of work, what I do is I work with universities who are thinking about ways to enhance what they're doing around research campuses, science campuses, and what in this case we're calling a Millennial Campus. See here if we can go for it. There we go. So tonight we're gonna dive into that a little bit, and we're gonna so explain a little bit about what the Millennial Campus opportunity is. What I want to do before we do that is I want to share a little bit around what's called an innovation district. Talk about that. Then we're going to talk about the vision for UNCG's Millennial Campus and where that is today, and how you can help shape that and participate in that. And then we're going to go to table discussions, which is going to be a way for us to really dive in a little bit more to your specific questions and concerns and thoughts about what all this could be for you. So let's begin with this, a little overview of the way people work today and the way that is changing. What you see up there sort of in the black and white is really the way a lot of universities and research parks worked really from about the 1950s through about the 1980s into the 1990s. It was a very suburban model. Big companies like IBM, like GlaxoSmithKline, others, they moved out into big suburban research parks. And the type of folks who worked there were pretty much all of one sort of, all kind of old white guys. And they all worked there in their research park. And it was, it worked very successfully for a long time. But what's happening now is something entirely different in the way people work. They want a different kind of environment. And so we're seeing a real interest in these new kind of urban spaces. And whether people want to live, and people live you live downtown, people living downtown in UNC Greensboro and other cities, they want to work differently. They want a more creative environment, a more creative space, as opposed to the older workspace. And they want places where they can ride their bikes and where they can walk to work and where they are more connected to their community as opposed to simply driving to a big office building in the suburbs. So one of the projects, for instance, that we did when I was running Research Triangle Park. How many have driven through Research Triangle Park? All of you must have driven through, right? There's nothing to see there, right? You don't know where you are, you don't know where you've been, so it's 7,000 acres. Think about that. It's half the size of the island of Manhattan. And you can't buy a cup of coffee or walk anywhere. I mean, it's a very suburban model. So we wanted to change that kind of feel in RTP, and one of the ways we did it, we took an old building. This was a 1980s IBM building, and we called it the Frontier. We rebranded it, and we invited everyone who wanted to be a part of it to join in. So instead of making it a place where there were barriers and restrictions on the way people could participate, we opened it up as a big space where anybody who simply wanted to participate could come. So we had a place with scientists and technologists. We had a place with artists, musicians, teachers, freelancers, single moms, dads, people who just needed a place to come and connect and work, or share ideas, or have a cup of coffee, or simply spend time. And so it became a new way to connect in the community. And so we sort of call that idea convergence, and where you focus on people, places, and programs. So when Chancellor Gilliam has talked about what he wants to do here, he really wants to create an area of greater convergence, a greater opportunity for people to come together in places and share ideas around programs. So when we think then about that goal, we ask ourselves, well, what makes a really terrific innovation space or innovation district? And the term innovation district is a term that was coined about 5 years ago by an organization in Washington, D.C. called the Brookings Institute. And they were really saying is there's places all over the country that are doing really interesting things connected to their communities, connected to universities, and how are they doing that? Well, we took that concept of innovation district and we said, what are kind of the 4 things that define really great ones? Well, one is they're very collaborative. And by really, we mean highly collaborative. They're not just places where you have a common park or a common courtyard or a common plaza. They're places where you have a lot of activity, where you have things, you certainly might have great beer, you might have great coffee, you might have artists, you might have a performance, you might have people attending a speaker series event, they might be there for a workshop. It's a very transactional environment. So when you live or work in an innovation district, you're always going to have the opportunity to participate and do things. So the idea is it's not just a space, but it's a highly programmed, activated, engaged space where you're going to get value. Second is it's an authentic environment. So we're not trying to take something and create something entirely different. We embrace the character, the values, what makes that particular location special. So it's not about bringing in something different. The places that are great innovation spaces are the spaces that have a story, that have a history, and that you embrace that, and that's part of how you talk about that place. It's what makes you connect to that place. These places are also inspiring. Now, that inspiration can be in really great architecture, but it can also be in the art. It can be in a great outdoor space. This is a space that our firm helped do in Boston. And yeah, this is the convention center, but what we focused on was the green space out front. We created a variety of events and activities that have become so popular in the neighborhood. It was only meant to be temporary. It's became so popular that the city of Boston wants to keep it up. And it's popular because it's fun. It's inspiring to see people out enjoying themselves, having a good time, engaging with each other. And so inspiration can be captured in many different ways. And the final item is that it's accessible and it's affordable. This isn't about trying to make a new expensive environment, because the truth is expenses like that end up driving away innovation, and they end up being opposite of authenticity. So while we may need some new spaces in our innovation district, we really want to focus on how we can take existing spaces, the existing environment, and make it more accessible and open to people. How can we make it more affordable? So innovators, artists, musicians, planners, entrepreneurs can get in and make things happen. So without creating a whole new expensive market of real estate. Successful innovation districts are program driven, they're not real estate driven. So those are some things that we think we'd like you to think about when you think when we start to engage here in a little while around the working groups, around how those things might play into your interests. So the Chancellor mentioned the Millennial Campus's designation, and he also mentioned this project which I worked on at NC State University. And we show you this not because this is what you're aspiring to here in Greensboro. at UNCG. We show you this because it was the first Millennial Campus. How it came about was that NC State University had about 1,000 acres, and they decided to redevelop it as the first mixed-use university research campus, really anywhere in the country. And it was a very audacious, it was a very big idea, and it was very risky at the time. And it involved industry and government and university coming together in an environment where they could live, work, and play. It's 25 years later now. It's been highly successful. As the Chancellor said, I suffered a few wounds in the beginning because as any new project starts out, you hit all the bumps in the road. We hit all the bumps in the road. But the success of Centennial Campus meant that other public universities in the system wanted to try something similar. They wanted to have the same ability to try to do their own Millennial Campus. And so the Board of Governors, the state legislature, approved a process for universities to do that. And UNC Greensboro applied to the Board of Governors and got the authority to pursue their own Millennial Campus. So while they don't have 1,000 acres and they don't intend to build anything like this, that's why we show you Centennial Campus, just to show you where this idea came from and why it's called the Millennial Campus is the idea that it's an opportunity for all the public universities in North Carolina to participate. So when we look at the opportunity then to do a Millennial Campus, the first thing we say is, why do you do that? Why is it important to UNC, to Greensboro, to take advantage of this opportunity? Well, you just saw Frank Gilliam. Let me tell you, he is recognized nationally as a real go-getter. He is a chancellor who is widely admired nationally, and that's because UNC Greensboro is a university very much on the move. You're making, as he says, giant steps. You're certainly making a noticeable momentum. And so how do you take advantage of that momentum so that the university becomes a greater asset to the community, a greater asset to the state, a greater asset to the faculty and students who are here? So the things then we look at as the opportunities for the university when you do something like this is you want to make sure that you have an opportunity to grow your research capacity. So in the work that the university does around issues of health and wellness in particular, medicine, bio, all of those kinds of, this is an opportunity for the university to partner with private interests, government agencies, nonprofits, hospitals, to in fact grow that research capacity. And those new partnerships with private partners would mean that they could locate closer to the campus on the Millennial Campus project and create jobs and opportunity for students, for local residents, and it would create a greater economic return for the university and the city. The idea as well is that it creates an innovation ecosystem, which really just means it creates a better opportunity for people who, whether they are in the visual and performing arts or whether they're in health and wellness, can get an idea more quickly from their studio and lab into the marketplace. So it really improves that whole process. And it improves the connection between the campus and the community because unlike Centennial Campus, which existed really sort of in a bubble, this is really a blending of UNC Greensboro around the adjacent streets of the traditional campus property. So, we've begun a process of thinking then, what's the vision for this? So we know what the benefits are. We know that the university has the right, has gotten the ability to do one from the Board of Governors. We know what they could achieve if they pursue it. So what's the vision? What would it mean? What would that look like? And so this is where we are so far. So comments that you give us tonight can help shape how this continues to evolve. But the UNC Greensboro Millennial Campus Initiative will fuel strategic partnerships and community collaborations to create unique, meaningful academic experiences for our students, inspire new research and creative endeavors, and drive innovation, economic growth, and cultural enrichment, transforming our university and our region. It's big, it's inspiring, it's a way to move the process forward. Now, specifically, if we start to look at the campus district idea themselves, the thought is there would be 2 districts on the campus, but integrated into the fabric of the community. So again, the idea is not to create a bubble or a university like controlled area, but actually being integrated into the neighboring community. And there'd be areas where they can partner, the university can partner with the private sector, create new academic experiences, fuel economic development for the region, and create jobs. The 2 areas that the university's identified where they will focus programmatically, first being health and wellness, which would primarily be along Gate Street Boulevard. That would leverage the existing resources like the Kaplan Center to create an ecosystem of services and research activities designed to help foster healthy living. So the idea here is that along there you would have a variety of university programs, nonprofits, hospitals, public activities to promote health and wellness. So the community along that corridor would have the opportunity to participate in all those programs, that collaboration, that inspiration, that authenticity tied to that theme of health and wellness. And then, which I think is brilliant, just a really brilliant idea, is then to link that to this idea of supporting visual and performing arts along Tate Street, which is building on the core of the UNCG Auditorium, the Weatherspoon, Taylor Theater, and unique and local area businesses. So think about, a funky little street there full of interesting things happening around visual and performing arts. And ultimately, those 2 things of health and wellness and visual and performing arts even sort of come together, creating a very dynamic and lively and engaging set of streets adjacent to the campus and adjacent to the neighborhoods. So where are we in this whole process? Because this is not one event. This will not be the only event we have like this. This is all part of a process. So we've gone through this visioning exercise, right? We understand the university's goals. We engaged with a lot of internal stakeholders, community stakeholders, political leaders. We've developed that guiding vision, which you saw. We also did a competitiveness assessment, which means that we looked at best practices for other successful innovation districts and millennial campuses. We analyzed our research strengths and alignment with industrial opportunities. So does health and wellness really support Greensboro? Does the visual and performing arts support Greensboro? Is that going to be something that's really going to be valuable to the city as a whole? And the reason we are staying with that is because the answer we heard back was yes. And then, of course, we're going to just continue with the stakeholder engagement, which includes what we're doing tonight. We've also begun programming analysis, which is looking at where the real estate market is. How can this be successful based on the markets and the surrounding community? Again, connecting with community and hosting public meetings. Again, that's part of what we're doing tonight. Develop program concepts and strategies for how to activate the site. So we're sort of at that programming analysis stage. We've not begun designing anything. So we're not at a stage where we can even talk about where buildings may or may not go, or how do we use existing buildings, or what this does to, how this would impact things like traffic. Or we don't know any of those things yet. We haven't done any of the physical planning. This is all about what makes sense for the university and the community and the city before we ever get to the planning stage.